This is the second video in our series, The Recipe, the Rise, and the Reward. In our first video, I showed you the recipe and we set our bread dough up to rise for 20 minutes. After the 20-minute rise is complete, I decided to divide this batch into 4 loaves. When I began baking, I did use a scale for several years and would weigh each individual dough ball to make sure they were close to the same ounce. Now I just do it by hand and by eye. I don't mind if one of my loaves is a little bigger, if one's a little smaller. I'm going to be putting these into 4x8 cast iron pans. The way you see me knead and shape my loaves might be a little different from what you've seen before. The first person that taught me how to make bread would have me roll the dough out into a long rectangular shape, like with a rolling pin, and then slowly roll the dough back up, like in a cinnamon roll style, and then tuck the edges and put it into place. But the second person that showed me how to make bread did it this way. And this is so much simpler. You're just folding the dough in half and then rotating it a quarter, folding it in half, rotating it a quarter. And I just keep doing it until I get the right texture on the outside of the bread, the right tightness, but where it's not tearing the dough. And then I'll tuck the ends underneath and put it right into the bread loaf pan. Other than saving time, I find the advantage to this way of shaping my bread is that I have no holes in the loaf. There's no air pockets, air bubbles that are going to make holes for whatever I'm spreading on the bread to fall through. And then I oil these loaves just to keep them from getting crunchy or dried out during their next rise period, which will be exactly 35 minutes. That first rising period we did, that was 20 minutes, that one can go on a little longer if the weather's cold or if you need the loaf to double in size and it hasn't yet. But this rising period, you really need to cut off right at 35 minutes. If it gets too large, the air bubbles get too expanded in the bread, and when you put it in the oven, it won't be able to handle the heat, and those air bubbles will pop and your whole bread loaf will deflate. I actually use this bread recipe to make lots of different breads. I use it for biscuits, my regular sandwich breads. I have used it for cinnamon raisin rolls. I just add extra honey and cinnamon to the loaf and raisins. This time, for the first time, I was going to make biscuits inside of muffin, like cupcake tins. And my family love these so much, they insist I make these every time I do regular sandwich bread as well. Since I had never baked my bread this way and I wasn't using a scale, the buns ended up having a variety of sizes, and I had a little bit of extra dough that I made 3 larger buns with, and I put them in another baking dish. Stay tuned for part 3 when we get to see the reward of this baking day.